press it again and go off. Call this hearing to order. Chairman Boss will be here shortly, but I think we should get going here. Commander Schaefer, thank you for being here. We appreciate the wisdom you're going to pass on to us here shortly, and we welcome the entire American Legion this morning. I want to thank the Legion for inviting me to be a speaker at their convention a few weeks ago. Hearing from your members is vital to shaping our policy and overseeing the actions of the VA. Commander Schaefer, thank you for being here. Thank you for the Legion's continued advocacy on behalf of our nation's veterans. The American Legion has been a key partner in passing critical legislation for veterans and their families over the past few Congresses, including the Deborah Sampson Act, the Hannon Act, and most recently the PACT Act. The PACT Act was a heavy lift, and I'm here to say we couldn't have done it without you and the entire VSO community, so give yourselves a hand. Thank you very much. But the fact is, our work here is far from being done. There are a number of issues requiring legislative action, from veteran suicide to homelessness to education benefits. We need the Legion's input, and we need your support to get these priorities across the finish line. The suicide rates across the country, and particularly in the veterans community, continue to be at unacceptable levels. And we need to work together to help address the persistent issues causing veterans to feel like they've been left behind. That's why I introduced S-928, the Not Just a Number Act, to identify non-health care factors and to help prevent suicide. No veteran should have to worry about finding a safe place to sleep at night. My Charge Act seeks to give the VA the tools it needs to tackle veterans' homelessness. Members of the National Guard and Reserve should be earning the same educational benefits as their active duty counterparts. I was proud to join my colleagues up here in introducing the GI Bill Parity Act, giving Reserve component service members credit for their time in uniform. But these legislative priorities and increased benefits need to be safeguarded from those that are looking to prey on our veterans. Veterans should not have to pay for assistance when seeking VA benefits. I hope to hear from you today about how we can work together to go after predatory claims consultants looking to get rich on the earned benefits of our veterans, like the folks in this room. For the veterans here today, thank you for your service, and thank you for your work on behalf of fellow veterans. With that, Chairman Bost.
I have to figure out where the buttons are in here. For some reason, they would want us to vote. I don't understand.
Constitutional duty to
Yeah, it's all that.
Yeah, I got it.
Hey, good morning, everyone. And I want to thank you for being here. And I would like to welcome Senator Chairman Tesler and thank him for going ahead and kicking this off, and Ranking Member Moran, who I'm sure will be here shortly. I want to thank you all for joining us. And a good morning to all of my fellow Legionnaires. And, you know, as you can tell, I am a proud member of the Murfreesboro, Illinois, Paul Stout American Legion Post, 127. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our post. It's been around quite some time, and Paul Stout was a private who fought in Bella Wood, fought in Bella, and then fell in the next battle up the road. And we have been around for quite a few years under the name Paul Stout, so much so that when we celebrated the 100th anniversary, we actually had a Paul Stout beer made. So, at any rate, I need to let you know I'm paid up on my dues, just so you know. Okay. I'd like to welcome all the American Legion National and all the members and our National Commander, Daniel Seifer, and his wife, Stacy, for being here today. I would also like to give a shout out to all the American Legion Auxiliary President, Lisa Williamson, and the National Commander of the Sons, Donald Lee Hall, our Jr., as he's known, for being here today as well. And a special welcome to everyone from Illinois. If you can raise and say, hey, we're here. Just so you know, there we go. All right. So, as most of you know, being the chairman is not a responsibility I take lightly. It is very, very personal to me, and I know it's personal to you. To explain to you, if you don't know, I'm a Marine. My grandfather on my mother's side, Marine, Korean War. My dad and his brothers were all Army Korean War. My uncle was Vietnam Marine. He was the victim of the ultimate oxymoron, friendly fire. He did not pass. He has had a very successful life, but he does have a 100% rating, and the VA has been very good to him over his life after his time of service. My son is a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps right now, reservist, but was active for many years. And my grandson is an F-18 mechanic, a corporal in Miramar, California. So it is very, very personal to me, as it is to you. I know the sacrifices you've made. I know the sacrifices that your family's made. And I know at the end of the day, you just want access to health care and benefits and services you've earned without a big headache. Our veterans service organizations community play a vitally important role in making all of that happen. You know where VA is falling short because you hear it from the boots on the ground that you talk to every day. And all around this country, you know what the problems are, and you also know that the statement is if you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA, because they all have unique issues and problems. Some are wonderful, some we got to work on. But make no mistake, your advocacy here in D.C. and across the country really makes a difference. And I'm proud of all that we've accomplished together over the last few years, including the President signing the Bipartisan PACT Act and putting that into law. Now, this is the largest expansion of health care and benefits for veterans and their families in recent history. And we're going to make sure VA gets it right. Because sometimes, I don't know if you know this, we pass laws, then we have to do a follow-up and make sure they're actually doing what we said to do. So as chairman, it is my top priority of mine to hold the VA accountable for you, the men and women who serve, no matter what. So please call or visit our website to report waste, fraud, or abuse. We need your help to make the VA what you deserve. Looking ahead, I'm going to be focusing on improvements where we can to modernizing the delivery of care and services from the VA. We have made great progress in identifying improvements that could be made for the veterans community care program through our oversight efforts. We are also working on legislation to increase accessibility and accountability in the VA healthcare system. As chairman and as a fellow veteran, I will keep pushing the VA to be more transparent with veterans when they are deciding their best option for care, whether in the VA or in the community. Now, right now, we're in a bipartisan negotiation to get a package of veterans bills to the President's desk. This comprehensive package includes many of American Legion's priorities like expansion of the VA's long-term care service to put veterans in control of where they want to live out the rest of their days, strengthening the community care program, expansion of vet tech education program, and there's so much more we're going to be working on. We will get the package done this year, but our work is nowhere near being finished. We know we've got still a lot to do. My door will always continue to be open to each of you because veterans are still fighting a VA bureaucracy to access the health care they want when and where they need it, facing challenges receiving timely health care and services in rural and remote areas, dealing with underperforming VA employees who don't always have the veteran's best interest in mind, and dealing with the effects of a 20-year war and accessing quality, timely, comprehensive mental health care and support. Now, these might seem like small things, but it comes down to this. They impact veterans' lives every single day. I promise to keep up the fight that we're all in together. And now it is not the time to take our foot off the accelerator. And I will ensure that VA gets the budget it needs to complete the goal. I look forward to meeting the mission alongside of every one of you. Thank you again for being here today, and with that, I was going to yield to Chairman Tester, but obviously he has already finished his opening remarks. I was going to say something and allow Mr. Takano, and then yield to Senator Moran. Obviously, I'm the one here. So, what I would like to do at this time is say welcome and yield to our gentleman from Wisconsin, Representative Fitzgerald, to introduce the American Legion's commander.
Thank you, Chairman Bose. It's great to be with you here today. Especially great to be sitting here alongside American Legion National Commander Daniel Seehafer, who I'm very proud to be introducing today. I've always revered the American Legion for their work. From my days as a recruit at Fort Jackson, all throughout my career to finishing up as a battalion commander with the U.S. Army Reserves. It's leaders like Commander Seehafer who keep the mission alive. Mr. Seehafer was elected National Commander of the American Legion last August in Charlotte, North Carolina, during the 104th National Convention. For any of you familiar with him, you know he likes to say it's personal when talking about the American Legion's mission of serving veterans and their families. Though he serves all veterans, Mr. Seehafer is a Wisconsinite through and through. He was born and raised in Merrill, Wisconsin, and lives in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin today with his children, and as mentioned earlier by the chairman, his wife Stacy, who is a member of the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 157. So obviously it's kind of a family effort. Mr. Seehafer is an ordained minister from Wisconsin, where he also earned his American Legion eligibility through service in the U.S. Navy and Navy Reserve. He even served as a military chaplain. Commander Seehafer was installed as assistant pastor of St. Stephen's Lutheran Church in Horicon in 1997 and continues to serve as administrative pastor of the church and its school. A member of American Legion Post 157 in Horicon, Commander Seehafer served in a number of American Legion offices at every level, including National Chaplain and Commander of the Department of Wisconsin. As if this wasn't impressive enough, Mr. Seehafer earned an Outstanding Heroism Award for administering the Heimlich maneuver to a choking victim at an American Legion dinner. Like I said, his dedication to service knows no bounds. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to also recognize Mr. Seehafer and the American Legion for the important advocacy work that they do here in Congress on behalf of veterans and their families. The PACT Act immediately comes to mind. I was certainly proud, like other members of Congress, to support this bipartisan legislation. And thanks to the help of folks like Mr. Seehafer, Commander Seehafer, we got the legislation across the finish line to enact the most significant expansion of benefits and services for toxic exposed veterans. His qualifications and record truly say it all. The American Legion is lucky to have Commander Seehafer as a leader, and we, as members of the American Legion, are fortunate enough to be able to not only hear his testimony today, but look forward to his actions in the future. With that, it's my great privilege and honor to welcome a fellow Wisconsinite to this hearing on behalf of the American Legion. I yield back.
Thank you, and Commander, you are recognized for 10 minutes for your opening statement.
First of all, thank you, Representative Fitzgerald, for being here. I appreciate that, taking time out of your schedule. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to begin by introducing the individuals who are sitting on this panel with me. Our Legislative Chair, Patricia Harris, and Director, Julia Mathis. Our Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation Director, Tiffany Ellett. Our Veterans Employment and Education Chair, Jay Bowen, and Director, Joe Sharp. And our Executive Director, Shanin Nuntavong. Now I want the representatives of our nearly 3 million American Legion family members to please stand and be recognized. First of all, our national officers serving with me this year. Next, our past national commanders. Our National President of the American Legion Auxiliary, Lisa Williamson. Our National Commander of the Sons of the American Legion, Donald Lee J.R. Hall, Jr. And finally, it's of extreme importance for me to recognize my wife, once again, Stacy, who is my biggest supporter and ally, who I deeply love. Now that you met our leaders, let's get to the purpose and the relevance of this testimony. Chairman Bost and Ranking Member Takano, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran. It is my honor and privilege to share with you and your committees the American Legion's top priorities for the second session of the 118th Congress. In my opening statement, however, I will address something that is more than a priority to us. In fact, I heard it described as a marketing campaign and cool slogan to a catchy phrase and even a worthwhile initiative. However, none of these words appropriately reflect what Be the One is to the American Legion family. Rather, it's a mission, our mission, to change lives and save lives. And yes, Chairman, it is personal. There is no single deed that the American Legion family can accomplish that outweighs the prevention of a veteran from taking their own life. Nothing. We know firsthand that we have saved lives. Legionnaires like Jeff Freeman from Post 190 in Ripon, California, continues to live life now with purpose and relevance. Last year at one of our Be the One events, he told us that the Legion saved my life. You see, it was 10 years after he attempted suicide. He is not a victim, but a suicide survivor. That's what Be the One is. It's our mission to be the one, to save one. We do this then by destigmatizing the issue of mental health. Veterans value courage, and it takes courage to ask for help. However, the American Legion doesn't sit back and just wait. Instead, we take a proactive approach and ask veterans if they are okay. That's what we call the buddy check. We thank Congress and members of this critical committee for passing legislation directing the Department of Veterans Affairs to conduct its own National Buddy Check Week. And they did. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Just like you did with the PACT Act. Again, thank you for that. Now, when we look at the buddy check, without a doubt, it made an impact. Personal contact changes lives, and personal contact saves lives, period. A major purpose of the American Legion's Be the One mission is to raise awareness. We have lost more than 135,000 veterans to suicide since 9/11. This is well more than all the American deaths incurred during the entire Korean War, Vietnam War, Gulf War, and the global war on terrorism combined. A veteran is 50% more likely to take their own life than a person who has never served in the military. This must stop. So what can Congress do? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Congress can be the one to enhance the military experience by supporting quality of life legislation. Be the one, then, to expand access to affordable child care, increase funding for barracks and family housing, and ensure timely access to mental health care. Congress can also be the one to improve oversight of military sexual trauma and ensure that both the Departments of Veterans Affairs and Defense provide timely, meaningful, and sensitive treatment for those who have experienced it. And Congress can be the one to expand research and access to alternative treatments and therapies. The National Survey on Drug Use and Health shows that in 2021, approximately 2.8 million veterans experienced an illicit drug or alcohol use disorder, and 92.4% did not receive treatment. We urge you to consider legislation that would effectively address TBI and PTSD. We also know that if services are offered, services will be used. In 2023, the first year that VA enacted a new policy offering free emergency suicide prevention care in and outside the VA system, 49,714 veterans accessed this benefit, saving a projected $64 million in health care costs. When I was first elected last year in August, one of my very first visits not only impacted me personally, but really solidified the importance of our mission. A mission, again, of purpose and relevance. Again, changing lives and saving lives. After my remarks in Tennessee, a veteran came up to me and said, "Commander, what you talked about, that was me. That was me." You see, he was wounded by an IED and was not only struggling with PTSD, but TBI as well. As he left the military and transitioned into the civilian life, the pressures of life itself, family expenses and needs did not stop just because he was injured. He didn't think his family would stick around, and honestly, he was starting to question if he should stay around too. In fact, this wheelchair-bound veteran wheeled himself into another organization and requested assistance, not just with hands out asking for money, but direction. However, the members never looked up from their card game, but one voice penetrated his soul, saying, "I fought my war, I can't fight yours." With feelings of hopelessness, desperation, and rejection, he decided to end his life. So he put a revolver in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Not once, but twice. Both times, however, it did not fire. I personally believe that God gave many reasons why it did not go off. First of all, not only placing American Legion Post 172 in Georgia in his path, but empowering their leadership to take him in. That caring embrace that they gave, and connecting him with the right people at the right time, which not only saved his home and family, but him. Also, so that this young veteran would realize his purpose and relevance in life as he now leads his post as their commander. Talk about changing a life and saving a life. And finally, it is for us. It's for us, even today, because we too can be the one to change a life and even save a life in what we do for our veterans and their families. This, ladies and gentlemen, is why we have Be the One. In addition to our Be the One mission, the American Legion has other priorities which we submit as part of our written testimony here today. Criminally punishing companies that prey on veterans and their families is extremely important. And we see a constant barrage of advertisements from unaccredited actors who charge excessive fees for services on claims that should be provided at no cost. requiring all separating service members to participate in a robust transition assistance program, which would cover employment and business opportunities, educational resources, housing options, health benefits, and other quality of life topics that can improve mental wellness and reduce suicide. Ensuring that every branch of our military is paid in the event of a government shutdown. The last long shutdown caused a pay interruption for the U.S. Coast Guard. This should never, ever happen again. Pundits and self-proclaimed experts tell us not to expect major legislation from a divided Congress during a presidential election year. Well, Chair and everyone, I do reject that analysis. Veterans issues have traditionally unified Congress because in your hearts, we know you love this country. We know. And truly wish to serve veterans. We know you do that. Just as veterans have served America. A major step in this direction would be the passage then of a budget, a complete budget, not another CR. Today, Russia is on the march. Illegal crossings at our southern border remain high, and veterans continue to fight that plague of suicide. My friends, any member of the military will tell you that you cannot move forward without a plan. Yes, you may win a firefight here and there, but you will not achieve your overall mission without a plan. For the sake of veterans, their families, and for all Americans, I implore you to put partisan politics aside and give us your plan. Chairman Bost, Chairman Tester, right? And members of the committees on Veterans Affairs. On behalf of the American Legion, I thank you for giving the nation's largest veteran service organization the opportunity to share our priorities. I welcome any questions you have for me, our commission chairs, and of course, our national staff. And I end by asking you to join the American Legion, no, I take that back, to join the American Legion family in changing lives and saving lives today and now. Thank you. Thank you.
First off, thank you for that opening. And before we go to questions, we're joined by Ranking Member Takano. It's kind of busy this morning and things are jumping around, but he has an open statement and he's recognized for that.
Well, thank you, Chairman Bost. I'd like to start by extending a welcome to our Senate colleagues on the House side this morning. It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's really great to see all the VSO members and veteran advocates in our annual discussion of priorities. I'm very pleased to see National Commander Daniel Seehafer. Thank you for your opening statement, and other representatives of the American Legion, and to learn about your legislative priorities for the second session of the 118th Congress. And I know that the Legion held its fly-in a couple of weeks ago, but if there are any Californians here today, I extend a hearty welcome. So Californians, let me know if you're here. Great. I also welcome welcome Korean American Vietnam veterans from New York and the Washington area. Korean American veterans. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from the VSOs represented on our second panel. And during the previous two Congresses, I made it my mission to diversify the voices that are represented at these hearings. We were successfully able to include several organizations whose demographic groups had never been represented in these critical conversations. And I'm grateful to see that tribal veterans continue to be represented, but I'm disappointed that none of this year's invitees specifically represent the voices of veterans of color, LGBTQ+, and other minority veterans. Creating a VA that is welcome to all veterans is one of my priorities, and getting there starts with ensuring those veterans are represented in conversations about veterans' issues and priorities. These hearings are our opportunity to hear from organizations like yours about what issues are impacting veterans and what Congress needs to do to help. I read in the testimony that one of Vietnam veteran of America's priorities is honoring past VVA National President Thomas Corey. For almost 40 years, Mr. Corey was a tireless advocate for Vietnam veterans and veterans of every generation. His passing a couple of months ago was deeply felt in the veteran community. I know that Congressman Mast has introduced a bill to name the VA Medical Center in West Palm Beach, Florida, the Thomas H. Corey Healthcare System of West Palm Beach. I also want to thank the Vietnam veteran community for its support of the Korean American Valor Act. It became law in no small part because of the advocacy of this community and the support of this community, and we look forward to working with you all to ensure its timely implementation. I also want to take a moment to wholeheartedly support the effort and commit to working with Chairman Boss to getting it brought to the floor quickly. What I'm referring to is the MAST legislation to rename the West Palm Beach Medical Center. I look forward to discussing other priorities of the American Legion and the organizations on our second panel this morning. It was during these very hearings a couple of years ago that the VSOs spoke in a unified voice and gave us our marching orders to finally get My PACT Act passed. The Honoring Our PACT Act has been called the single biggest expansion of veterans' health care and benefits in generations. The Biden administration believes so strongly in the importance of this legislation that it accelerated the PACT Act's timeline to make all veterans who were potentially exposed to toxins eligible to enroll in VA health care years ahead of schedule. We will continue to evaluate places where the PACT Act can and should be expanded. For example, there is new evidence supporting toxic exposure claims at K2, and there are Blue Water Navy veterans who served outside of the demarcation line but are experiencing the same disabilities and diseases as sailors who were served a few miles away. The PACT Act was never meant to be a one and done. We will keep working to make it as comprehensive as possible. We knew that when we passed the PACT Act, and we still know, that addressing the effects of toxic exposure was going to be expensive. But that was the cost of war. That is the cost of war. And when we asked service members to put their lives on the line, we didn't ask about the cost. And we shouldn't nickel and dime veterans now that they're home. We must ensure that the funds needed for health care and benefits for toxic exposed veterans are always available. We must not go back to making veterans compete with other veterans or with other discretionary spending programs that serve all Americans. I give you my word that I will continue to fight to prevent that from happening. I also remain focused on ending veteran homelessness, and over the last couple of years, VA has made great progress in getting veterans housed. There are policy tools that reduce homelessness among veterans that we know work, and we have allowed VA's authority to use those tools to expire. We owe it to our veterans to ensure that they have a roof over their heads and a place to live. So we must get the HOME Act passed now. Now, veteran suicide has also been a priority for me. Well, let's say ending veteran suicide has been a priority for me and my colleagues on this committee. We must ensure that VA has the tools and resources it needs to reach all veterans who are struggling. And I'll continue to fight to ensure that VA is best positioned to address veteran suicide. And Commander, your remarks were just so extremely poignant on this point. And I share that commitment with you all. And thanks to the implementation of the Compact Act over the past year, over 50,000 veterans have called 988 and have received emergency mental health care. So I'm very grateful that we've seen that happen, and that happen on a bipartisan basis as well. We will continue to work with organizations like yours to ensure that no veteran slips through the cracks. The grassroots nature of your organization makes it much easier for us to ensure that we have eyes on as many veterans as possible. I know we can work together to make progress on reducing veteran suicide. I look forward to working with my colleagues to gain momentum on veterans legislation before this Congress ends, and I really hope that we can set aside issues that do not directly benefit veterans and instead focus on what we're here to do. We're here to ensure that the brave men and women who have given so much to this country receive the high-quality health care and benefits they have earned. So I thank you all for being here, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. We are going to go to questions, and I will recognize myself for, we done 3 minutes? 3 minutes. I had to check with staff to see what was going on. So, Commander, you know, I was pleased that we were able to get my bill to protect veterans' Second Amendment rights signed into law through the VA appropriation bill, and I'm grateful for the American Legion's support. In addition to protecting veterans' constitutional rights, how is it important to veterans' confidence level in the VA that passed?
Chairman, thank you for the question, and again, I'm proud to say that since 1919, and again, when we raised our hand, we definitely made that commitment, didn't we, to uphold and defend that Constitution, and we will continue.
And I thank you for that. I believe that with the passage of that, many of you that live in flyover country, that's what we refer to, the middle part of this United States where I live, many of our veterans chose not to use the VA because of the fear of the way they had implemented that and been doing that for 30 years. But I'm also going to ask, so last year the American Legion testified before our committee in support of H.R. 4278, the Restore VA Accountability Act. Now, why does the VA need these authorities to hold its small percentage of bad employees in check?
Chairman, again, thank you for that and your passion for serving veterans and their families. I'm going to ask my director, Tiffany Ellett, for further comment.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's really important that VA is full of staff that's going to take care of our veterans. One, on the side of VA staff to be protected, but the other on the side of having that staff that's going to be there to protect our veterans. We do support your bill, and thank you for introducing it. It's a really important thing to put out there. I did sit in on the AFG-CIO meetings a couple weeks ago, and there was an issue that was raised that we'd like to talk to your office about with this piece of legislation, that some of the staff are worried about leadership or other personnel using this legislation to get rid of people on a vendetta basis.
I understand.
So they are concerned about that, and we're concerned about that, as we do want our VA employees to be there because we want retention, right? So we would like to talk to your office and work with you in getting this piece of legislation so it's protecting both the veteran and the VA.
Wonderful. We look forward to working with you with that. Commander, we've got a very short time here, but what are some ways to increase accountability at DOD to make sure we're taking care of every service member's needs during their transition? Because I tell people that we had a TAP program whenever I got out in 1982, and it was the colonel tapped me on the shoulder and said, "See you later." The TAP program, if you want to expand where we want to.
Right. Again, Chairman, thank you for that. You know, the TAP program is essential. And I think what the whole concept of this is that we have the resources, but we're not implementing and giving the time. The time. When we're talking about our officers, and I even talked to Chairman Tester on this as well, you know, when I have the officers 2 years or whatever that amount of time, and they're looking to the future already. What can I do where am I going to live? How can I get this job? All these things, but the enlisted don't have that time. So, we can't just throw the program away, obviously, because I know I heard rumblings about something like that, or it's no good. or it's a waste of time, I even read. It's not. The resources are there. Let's use them. Implementation. Give our enlisted the time.
Thank you. With that, Chairman Tester, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Commander, you're absolutely right. I think that you know what many of us have found out over the last few years, and that transition time and the mental health issues that we're seeing amongst our veterans are very closely connected, so we appreciate everything the American Legion's doing. I want to talk about toxic exposure for just a moment. More than 694,000 toxic exposed veterans and survivors are receiving PACT Act benefits, long overdue. I wasn't here for your testimony, I apologize, but I know your testimony rightly highlighted that some veterans are still waiting to have their toxic exposure properly recognized, and that is why we included a science-driven framework for establishing new presumptive conditions. But my question is to you, Commander, has the VA included your input when determining what exposures to put through the new presumptive process, such as the new report on Camp Lejeune?
Again, first and foremost, I do want to say thank you again for the making me feel comfortable, put it that way. Not only at your office, but the phone call and even here today. Since I've been traveling a lot, just to answer that question, I am going to ask our director, Tiffany Ellett, because she is boots on the ground on this one.
All right, Tiffany.
Tiffany?
Thank you, Commander. It's good to see you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. We work with the VA very closely. They do ask us to be a part of working groups, roundtables, open sessions, closed sessions. So I have a very good working relationship with VBA and VHA. So they do ask us for our input, and it feels like they're really receiving it. So as far as I know, we're working pretty well together.
That's good news because they're working for you, so they should be listening to you. Okay. Look, a common theme at VSO hearings is the need to crack down on predatory claim consultants. This question's for you, Commander, or whoever you want to relay it to. Does the American Legion support our efforts to reinstate criminal penalties for violating existing law through S-740, which is also called the GUARD Act?
Chairman, again, thank you for that question, and again, your passion on this. Without a doubt, we support that legislation. And again, it pains me to know that there are predators out there. In fact, I'm going to give you a real live situation because some people don't think this exists. I had a Legionnaire that was severely injured, and a predator sought him out, gave him his card, and he says, "No, I'm okay." He wanted to push his services on him, and he says, "I'm okay. I have the American Legion." Do you know what his response was? "Oh, you're going that way."
Yeah.
That is sick to me. That is sick. Because what we do is we have our service officers, that is the true ally, the true friend that I want standing not only by the veteran, but also supporting the family. That is who we are. And you know something? What we charge? That's right. I always like to say it's FREE, period.
Thank you, Commander. I appreciate you. I appreciate the American Legion. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Ranking Member Takano, you're recognized.
So, you all say don't feed the sharks? You know that phrase? Don't,
Yes, we know that phrase, yes.
don't feed the sharks. Don't feed the sharks. So, Commander Seehafer, in reading the sections of your testimony on the Transition Assistance Program, I definitely agree that the services need to be held accountable for getting services to TAP on time. So I proposed moving primary jurisdiction in Congress for TAP from the Armed Services Committees to the Veteran Affairs Committee so that we can better hold the services accountable. what would you think about that? Would you all think about supporting that move to ensure greater oversight over the TAP program?
Congressman Takana, again, thank you for your dedication to veterans as well as the family. I do want to ask our executive director to respond.
Thank you. Thank you, Commander. Ranking Member Takano, we love this committee. We trust this committee. We would support that effort.
Well, thank you. I've been talking to the chairman about that, and I think trying to get the two committees together has been a problem and a challenge. But I think, I don't want to ding our folks over on the armed services side, but I just think we pay more attention and would be. It's a matter of attention, and so I thank you for the Legion's response to that. Well, continuing on our talk about transition, I agree that a more customized experience, tailored to the individual service member, is needed. And I've been working on a bill with Representative McClellan to require a specific TAP track for National Guard and Reserve service members. And I see that the transition between duty statuses for Guard and Reservists is being different than the transition from active duty to civilian life. Is that in line with what you would like to see improved in TAP?
Congressman, again, without a doubt, that's what we would like to see and definitely support it. We have a team here that would like to talk to you, whether it's you personally or your staff, so we can hammer this out.
I would welcome that opportunity. And can you also speak for your support of the Legion support for Mr. Levin's recently introduced Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act?
Absolutely, Congressman. With the parity, I mean, this is near and dear also to our hearts. When we're looking at the Guard and Reservists compared to the active duty, they're serving. They did this. In fact, that through the research that we were doing, when 9/11 happened in New York, who were the first ones there? We know, it's Guard and Reservists. And so out of all the benefits as well, we have this, this gap in the education aspect. And talking about what I said before with saving lives and changing lives, we talk about prevention, education. I don't understand why that isn't a part of it as well. And when we say that, this leads to gainful employment, education, not being dependent, but rather independence. That's what we want. That's what we want for our veterans.
Well, thank you, Commander. I couldn't agree more, and I yield back.
Senator King, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Commander, you're causing me to break a lifetime rule, which is never follow a preacher to the podium. Your opening statement was fantastic, and I want to thank you for that. I bring greetings from my wife, who's from Wisconsin. In my home in Maine, there's a big cheese head in the closet. I just have to...
All right.
In listening to your testimony, I think we can summarize a lot of what we're trying to do here is by making two phrases obsolete. When people hear them years from now, they're going to say, what are you talking about? Those two phrases are veteran suicide and veterans homelessness. That ought to be stripping. Now, one of the issues in Maine with veteran suicide, 60% of our veteran suicide are with firearms. It occurs to me that American Legion posts are safe spaces for veterans. Would you consider working with our posts across the country to provide storage, safe storage for firearms for veterans in our communities?
Senator King, again, thank you also for taking time out of your schedule, not only being here, but embracing me when I came to visit you, and we talked about this very issue, and we want to, we would love to be able to partner with anyone, especially you, on this. And we do think, I mean, a lot of people don't realize how many posts we have in our nation.
Every community.
12,000, you know, and basically, like you said, every community. And in fact, I want to give you a real live example of this. this will work. And I don't want to demonize any others because I brought this same concept up, but I need to be honest with you. I had eyebrows go, like kind of like this. It's like we are a resource.
Of course, a trusted resource.
A trust, yeah, absolutely. And what happened in this situation, it was two legionnaires. One legionnaire was not safe. And here's the example of it. He did call somebody who he trusted, another legionnaire, and asked, "Is it okay? Take my weapons."
Good.
This is exactly what we're talking about.
I want to also reference the ranking member's comment about the jurisdiction between Armed Services and Veterans Affairs. I'm also on Armed Services. You have an agent on the Armed Services Committee. I can tell you that right now. I'll be there for you in that committee. And in fact, one of my first hearings on Armed Services 10 or 12 years ago, the point I made was, as I was listening to transition and recruiting and everything, the Pentagon should spend as much time, money, and effort on transition out as they do on recruiting in. I'm out of time. I appreciate it, Commander, for your incredibly effective advocacy. The final point is, let us know where we can help. We can't fix problems we don't know about. Be in touch, and it doesn't have to be in a big room with microphones. Let us know what we can do to support these brave men and women across this country. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Representative Pappas.
Thank you very much, Chairman Boss. Commander, thanks for your passionate testimony here today, and I really appreciated the way you highlighted the unity of purpose that we need when we approach these issues. Your agenda must be Congress's agenda when it comes to delivering for our veterans, and I thank all the Legionnaires and veterans who are here in this room. We want to continue to honor your service and work together to get the job done. Whether it's retirement pay or disability compensation, our veterans deserve all the benefits that they've earned, full stop. This is an issue I've heard about from veterans in my district in New Hampshire for years. I've got a constituent in Auburn, for instance, who joined the Army, was deployed to Iraq. He was shot twice during a counterinsurgency operation, was placed in a medically induced coma, took him years to fully recover. He was awarded 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor for his service, and upon leaving the Army, he was granted DoD retirement benefits and later VA disability compensation. It's one of the reasons why I'm supporting the Major Richard Starr Act, and I think we've got to get this across the finish line. This legislation would finally allow combat injured veterans with less than 20 years of military service to collect both military retired pay and disability compensation that they earned. They earned these benefits in full. So despite overwhelming support in the Congress, this bill has yet to make it through and be signed into law. And I'm wondering if you can share some of the consequences to your members of being unable to collect their full benefits and what Congress must do to get this legislation done.
Congressman, again, thank you for your passion as well and all the work that you do for our veterans and their families. You know, basically what can be done, or what you can do to get this done, pass it, that's the number one. However, with that, the importance of that, you know, we look at it and we've been classifying it around our circles as a tax, a veteran's tax. I mean, to say that here you have a retiree putting 20 or 30 or whatever the years are, right? They earn that, and is it their fault that somehow they get disabled and now they're penalized? I think that's wrong. Not I think, it is wrong. And so when we talk about changing a life, passage of that bill, that legislation would definitely change a life.
Well, thank you very much for looking out for your members and for so many veterans that I hear from on that issue. And I'll continue to work with you all to make sure Congress feels the urgency there. It's about time we got it done, and it's about basic fairness. These benefits have been earned, they've been paid for through veteran service, and we've got to reflect that in law. So appreciate your testimony. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Senator Blumenthal, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today as a proud member of the American Legion. from Connecticut. I'm sure we have some folks from Connecticut here today. Thank you for making the trip. I'm really very, very proud of your advocacy, which has been so important on veterans' causes, most especially on the PAC Act, which I was helpful in leading, and the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. Millions of Americans now are eligible, especially under the expanded coverage, for everyone, regardless of where they served and what time, whether it was in the United States or abroad, whether it was in training or elsewhere. Toxic exposures. People need to be aware and informed, and your outreach is going to be so important, not only in passing the act, but now in creating awareness about it so people can get screened and take advantage of it. So thank you for what you've done and what you will do. And as you know, the initial claims process can be done free of charge, and many of our fellow members of the American Legion have filed claims. The help that you provide, obviously, is done without any expectation of compensation or reward. A number of individuals who do provide that kind of access are accredited by the VA, and VSOs like the Legion have a congressional charter to carry out their work. But unfortunately, there are also others who are trying to take advantage of veterans in this claims process. And there are claim sharks, as they're called, who take enormous commissions from veterans for their service that should be entirely free and is free when it's provided by you. So I introduced the GUARD VA Benefits Act in this Congress with Senator Boozman, Chairman Tester, Senator Graham. It's bipartisan. Essentially, it cracks down on these scam artists, and it's designed to ensure that penalties can be levied against them. The VFW, the DAV, and dozens of other veterans organizations support the GUARD Act. 44 attorneys general from across the country have expressed their support for a bill in a letter to Congress this year. And I respectfully ask that the American Legion support it as well. I think you have in past years. I'm not sure whether you do now, but if you could consider supporting it, I think it would be most beneficial to veterans. And I want to join in thanking you for all the work you've done on veteran suicide, on homelessness. There is no excuse for a veteran to be homeless. There is no excuse for suicide to be an issue in the United States of America. And I hope that you will support the GUARD Act to enable veterans to have access to these benefits without having to pay commissions to unaccredited claim sharks. Thank you.
Senator, just real quick, I'm going to tell you right now, absolutely we support it. Right, family?
Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you.
Representative Crane.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate all you guys showing up today. I feel a little naked without one of those cool hats. I'm a veteran myself. I'm a Navy guy. Joined the Navy the week after 9/11. Served in the SEAL teams for a little bit. So when I look out there, I see a lot of my brothers and sisters. I'm not... There is, obviously, guys, a lot of partisanship up here in Capitol Hill. You guys know that. One of the cool things, though, about being up here is there's not a lot of partisanship when it comes to us veterans. This is something that Democrats and Republicans get on board to support, and I'm proud of that, and I hope it continues. But I do want to talk to my brothers and sisters out there about something really important that keeps me up at night. Guys, you guys know where we're at with our national debt, 34 trillion plus and counting. I want to ask you guys, I want to talk to you guys seriously, because you guys don't get there's not a lot of people that have serious conversations with you guys. What do you guys think the magic number is where this house of cards finally collapses? Do you think it's 35 trillion? Do you think it's 40 trillion? Do you think it's 50 trillion? Do you think it's when the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, finally form their alternative currency? Why do I say that, guys? What do you think, when this house of cards collapses financially, and that's the trajectory that we're on. No country in the history of the world has been able to do what we're doing. What do you think our benefits, because I get them too, what do you think our benefits are going to look like then? And the reason I bring that up, guys, is because there's not many people up here that talk about it, think about it. They don't talk to you about it. And I want us collectively to start thinking about that, because we are servicemen and women. We love this country. We fought for it. And that fight isn't over. There's an economic fight going on right now up here to try and sustain not only our economic prowess, but also the benefits that we have. So I wanted to bring that up to you guys. And I hope that you go back and you start talking about it in your communities and with your representatives, because, guys, this trajectory is not sustainable. I hate to be the guy that dampens the mood in here, but we need to have some serious conversations. Because every meeting that I walk into or every meeting that I host in my office, it's another group, usually that represents a good cause, and guess what they need? More resources, more money, and what we're doing is not sustainable. So I hope you guys take that back. God bless you all. Thank you for your service, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here and address you. Thank you.
Senator Hassan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Commander Seehafer, thank you so much for testifying here today, as well as for your military service. I want to acknowledge former state commander and now current National Vice Commander Bill Roy from New Hampshire. Thank you for being here, sir. Thank you for your service. We are very proud of all of our Granite State veterans, and I will just say that as I listened to your testimony, I was thinking of my father, who was a World War II veteran, who survived the bulge and often said to me, we don't always like each other as Americans, but we do have to love each other as Americans, and that's what you learn in this service. And so I thank you for reminding us of that unity of purpose that is so important. Commander, I want to start with a question. It's really about the PACT Act. I know you've mentioned it. I know people here know about it. But last week, the VA announced new PACT Act healthcare eligibility for millions of veterans ahead of schedule. Now, veterans who were exposed to toxins can go to the VA and enroll in healthcare, and they don't need to apply for VA benefits first. So I was really proud to help develop and pass the PACT Act with members of this wonderful committee on both sides of the Capitol, and I want to make sure that our veterans know about the care they're able to get under it. So I'm speaking out to New Hampshire veterans in particular today. I want to encourage any veteran who may have been exposed to toxins to contact the VA to see if you're now eligible to enroll in health care. Commander, can you just discuss how important it is that eligible veterans go to the VA, enroll, and get the care and support that they have earned and they deserve?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And again, your passion and your tireless effort on this act. And also, Bill's a pretty good guy. All right?
Yes.
But seriously on that, dealing with the VA, it is a great resource for us. This is the center of care, not just adequate care, but the best. And I just want to tell the brothers and sisters up here and really the whole family or whoever's listening, so far I've went to 28 states and 4 countries, literally went around the world already. And I've been to VAs, veterans' homes, everywhere, but every time people have come to me, these are your constituents, they have said the care is top-notch. I know there's little issues, and again, we will address them, but the care is top-notch. And you have such an ally right here. I mean, we're a nearly 3 million family members here. That's a great resource, and we will continue to get the word out. This is the place to go.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me take this turn, and also just thanks to the Legion for your work on the Buddy Check Week, and we're going to continue to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And now Representative Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is good to see so many fellow veterans in the audience today. Thank you for your service, both during uniform and after. It's always an honor to sit next to my Navy SEAL brothers here. I'm a Beret, Army Beret, and something has concerned me. If you've been following our markups in this committee, you know that I am concerned about the only offset that this committee has to use. We need your help on this because we have an offset that relies on extending the VA home loan fee that veterans pay. So in effect, our offset is charging our veterans more for every program that we add, every spending bill that we add, it charges our veterans. So veterans are paying for new veterans programs. It technically generates revenue that is supposedly offset, but it's not an offset. We don't cut a less noble program for the noble programs we have. So once again, I say veterans are paying for every new spending bill that this committee authorizes and gets appropriated. How does, and Commander, for you, how does the American Legion reconcile its support for this so-called offset with its mission to advocate for the well-being of all veterans, to include those that are paying the additional home loan fee?
Congressman, thank you for that thoughtful question. To answer that specifically, I want to call on our Executive Director.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you for that question, Congressman. We have a resolution, we are a resolution-based organization that we don't support any offsets. But what we would like to do is work with the committee and staff and find out other ways and other means of finding funding for all these programs and services. We got to work together to figure this out because our veterans are in need, and the only way to do that is to provide adequate funding there. So we will help.
So did you listen to my colleague here, Mr. Crane? Okay, so you're not in support of any alternative offsets whatsoever. And it doesn't have to be in the VA. So don't think that a VA offset must come from VA. I would like to work with you to find offsets anywhere in the budget because I am not saying we need to have VA offsets, but I think we need to work together, to use your term, to find a better way to offset because veterans care is important to the entire nation. I'm not suggesting it must come out of the VA budget. Don't misunderstand me. But I think we need to start to find a way so that our veterans don't pay for every new veterans spending bill. Thank you, and I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Ramirez.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to start today by acknowledging the tremendous work and the significant contributions that veteran service organizations have made and continue to make every single day. I don't think you hear it enough. I want to say thank you. I also want to give a special thank you to the veterans that are representing Illinois and the American Legion, so a big round of applause to the Illinois folks here. Thank you for your service. I know the chairman agrees with me, and for your commitment to the betterment and the lives of every single veteran here. Folks, I wanna shed a light on an issue that we don't really talk about here, but that's very close to my heart, particularly as we're talking about our veterans and the challenges as they're transitioning back into civilian life. My heart has been really struggling and thinking about the challenges to legal pathways to veterans who are threatened to be deported. I mean, think about it. After serving their country, giving their willing to risk their life, to me it's unimaginable that they're still at risk of deportation, that they're still at risk of being separated from their own family as a veteran. So, Commander, I want to make sure I got it right. Seehafer?
That's correct.
Oh, yes, yes. I want to ask you, what do you think is a solution to prevent veterans who've served our country from possible deportation?
Congresswoman, again, thank you for all the advocacy that you do, and again, the passion. It troubles a lot of us as well, those that have served our country. Just for, again, a little more boots on the ground dealing with this, I am going to ask my executive director to respond, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you, Congresswoman. We see this all the time. Veterans aren't educated about their citizen benefits when they join. They're not aware that they can apply for expedited citizenship. I think we need to take every opportunity to educate service members about their responsibility to apply for the paperwork that needs to be done to help expedite. Provide education and make it part of the culture of joining, enlisting, being part of an organization to serve and honor the United States of America. We have to do a better job of helping those. Most of them don't know that that opportunity is there.
Yeah, and I hear from some of my constituents and wives who say, my husband is now in Mexico, he was a green card holder, his life is the United States, he feels American and the challenges of even getting those benefits. So I would like to talk to you offline a little bit about the procedural process there and the challenges to that pathway. So thank you. I yield back.
Representative Landsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here and for your incredible service to the country. To my friends from Ohio, anyone out there from Ohio? There we go. Thank you. Welcome, and thank you for your service. I want to talk about employment and jobs and the work that you all in the VA and others, your partners, do. Part of this just has to do with making sure that every single veteran has access to good jobs, and but another piece of this is the benefit that our VA and VA partners provide in terms of employment services and how that helps to get folks into the VA world and network. Commander, you talked a little bit about this in your testimony. We have, and we have a piece of legislation that you all have supported. This is Employing Veterans to Feed America Act, which would direct the Secretary of Agriculture to create a pilot program on hiring veterans into positions related to agriculture, conservation, and nutrition. I think we'll get it marked up and passed. It is, my hope is that it will help to create another pathway for veterans in terms of good-paying jobs. I was hoping that you all may talk about that and the bill, but also just a larger issue.
Again, thank you, Congressman, for that. Veterans education and employment is very important, and I would be remiss if I wouldn't ask my chairman, Jay Bowen, to direct that, since he's patiently waiting here to speak. This is very important to us as well. This is where we talk about even prevention of what I was talking about. But Jay,
thank you, Commander, and thank you, Congressman, for the question. Absolutely, we believe in this. Veterans, especially when they're on active duty, a lot of them are outdoorsmen, and some of that is what drove them to go into the military. So it's just a natural progression, a migration for them once they get out to seek those types of careers. So we certainly support that and would advocate for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And just in general, other employment programs that you all would lift up, to me, because it's so important in terms of just helping veterans and their families, but it's also a way to get them in. And it does prevent all kinds of other things. Just the role of employment and education in general, just the programs that you all are working on. Oh, my time's up. I'm sorry. I will circle back, but I thank you all for your service, Chair. I yield back.
And I want to say, if I can, thank you to the American Legion. Commander, thank you for giving us your views and the Legion's views here today. And I also want to say thank you to the audience that obviously has come from every corner of this great nation to be here today, to be part of this. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for what you do every day. Because we know your service organization, as large as it is reaching out and is the boots on the ground. So we're going to excuse the first panel, but I'm going to need to explain something to you because you are a big group, okay? If you would, use that door so that we put our second panel, we can come in this, and it causes a smooth transition, okay? So thank you again, and we're going to have a brief recess while we switch. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, we want to welcome our second panel, and we want to thank you for being here today. I know we have a lot of important organizations to hear from in this panel, so let's get right to it. Today, we're joined by Colonel Barry Lysitsky of the Jewish War Veterans, Miss Rebecca Harrison Mullany of the Tragedy Assisted Program for Survivors, Miss Catherine Monet of National Coalition of Homeless Veterans, Commander Ren Campos of the Military Officers Association of America, Mr. Michael McLaughlin of the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, Mr. Melvin Sheldon Jr. of the National Congress of American Indians, Mr. Jack McManus of the Vietnam Veterans of America, Major General Frank McGinn of the National Guard Association of the United States, and Mr. John Hansuck of the Fleet Reserve Association. And again, welcome to all of you and all of your members in the audience as well. We want to thank you for being, for what you do every day in support of our veterans and their families. Colonel Lysitsky, you are now recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Tesler, Chairman Bost, ranking members of Moran and Tanko, members of the House, the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, and fellow veterans and friends and guests. I'm Colonel Barry Lysitsky. I'm the 92nd National Commander for Jewish War Veterans of the United States, and I'm honored to be here today. My credentials are as follows. I'm a career military member, started as an enlisted medic, combat medic, and culminated as a brigade commander. My military service spans for over 34 years with continued military service, supporting operations and conflicts from the Vietnam War all the way to the global war on terrorism. I retired from the military and served as a senior Army instructor at 2 high schools in a JROTC program. In 2017, I was appointed by the governor to be the superintendent of Chelsea Soldiers Home, the largest soldiers' home and one of the first in our nation. And I tell you all this because those are my credentials. But my real credentials are the members of JWV, our auxiliary, a Museum of National American Jewish Military History, and they are the credentials of JWV, and I am honored to be part of that organization. In 2 days, we will have our 128th anniversary, serving as the oldest chartered active veteran service organization in the United States. You know, as veterans, we all fought to protect our freedom of right, freedom of religion. As the only Jewish service organization, JWV opposes in all forms of hatred, discrimination, and bigotry, but is especially outspoken on anti-Semitism. JWV condemns the Hamas territory attack against Israel and emphasizes the terrorist actions anywhere, whenever it happens. Just as all veteran service organizations, our members are all volunteers, and we serve the call proudly to serve with all military veterans, their families, and their survivors. This is a great honor for us to serve. As a veteran, once again, we fought to protect our rights, and, excuse me, JWV stands with Israel, its military, and its citizens, and call on all Americans to join us in the condemning anti-terrorism. The remaining hostages must be immediately released and reconstituted with their family. JWV is the leading effort and demonstrates solidarity, unity from the larger veterans community of the United States. We secured the signature of 26 veteran service organizations and military service organizations that represent millions of current and former uniformed service members and their families to stand with us against anti-terrorism. On November 3rd, the letter was sent to many of our members for their statements. And JWV asked all Americans to be vigilant and to learn and educate and follow JWV, and we ask our Veteran Services Committee to join us as well. We feel that education is the key to reduce anti-Semitism actions and incidents in America or around the world. Whether it be professional development classes, ethics classes, compliance classes in the workplace, or just a fireside chat, JWV will assist any organization anywhere in that conflict. We'd like to talk quickly about medical records. Last year, I was privileged to stand before this group, and I heard one of the members say that we're looking for a basic database that is a good database to use. I would ask that you use the MEPS Military Entrance Processing Station, the first entrance processing station for any of us joining the military, to use their physical as the baseline for what you need for your medical records. And I have not talked to the MEPS commander, but that MEPS physical is a professional done physical. It beats any physical in any civilian world. I would also say that if you really want to do some work with this, any individual being released from active duty, that they take a similar physical. It makes a lot of sense to do the physical on the way in and the physical on the way out from the same grouping, and you'll get a standardization for that. So we highly recommend that to happen. In a conclusion of this, and I look to see that the clock is ticking, you know, I want to leave you with one quick thought. Where can we be that individuals on this panel can come before a distinguished group as your committee, talk freely, talk honestly, make recommendations, have you listen, have you observe, have you ask us questions? Only in the United States this can happen. And we're very, very proud to come before you to do this. And we're very proud that you're sitting there representing all the veterans, all their families, all their caretakers, and all their survivors. And as part of JWV, we're honored to be here, and we're here to assist all our veterans and this committee with anything they do. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And we're very proud to represent you. We really are. I think that goes this way for what all you do and everybody that's on this panel. So we'd like to also recognize Ms. Rebecca Hanson Mulaney for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Tester, Bost, Ranking Members Moran and Takano, and distinguished committee members, I'm grateful to be here today representing the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors and for the opportunity to share my story. 12 years ago, at the age of 24, my heart was full of ambition and hope for the future. I'd married an incredible man, Ian Morrison, an Apache pilot in the U.S. Army. His call sign, Captain America, spoke to his character. He served honorably and always did the right thing. He was kind and caring, artistic and sarcastic. He was smart, majoring in systems engineering at West Point. He was a man of faith, and he loved me. We were happy and building a life that truly felt like a gift. At 24, I was teaching on post at Fort Hood and pursuing a graduate degree in clinical counseling. Ian had come back to me safely after 10 months in Iraq, but he couldn't sleep. We tried everything. He sought help 6 separate times through the proper military channels. The only assistance he received was a prescription for Ambien, a black box morning sleep aid. The morning of March 21st, 2012, after his 3rd night on Ambien, was a seemingly normal one. He came to my classroom where he read to my students, something he did often. We had lunch together, and I gave him a big hug, never knowing it would be our last. Ian died that night. I found him in our bedroom, clothed in his Army fatigues, having taken his own beautiful life. He died by suicide at the age of 26 and taken all our plans for the future with him. I will never recover from what I saw that night. My husband, Captain Ian Samuel Morrison, did not want to die. He wanted to live. Like so many of his brothers and sisters in arms, he came home from Iraq in need of help that he did not receive. He died at home from the mental wounds of war and not in a war zone. Therefore, I was not recognized as a Gold Star spouse. I am in strong support of the TAP's recommendation to legally create a broad and inclusive definition of what constitutes a Gold Star family. Specifically, that definition needs to be died while serving or from a service-connected injury or illness. My own clinical work with surviving families over the past 10 years tells me that only good can come from equally honoring and recognizing the families of all veterans and service members who died as a result of their service, regardless of how they died or the geographical location. I grieved Ian intensely, the man I'd lost and the future with him that would never be. I eventually found healing in advocating for service members, veterans, and their families, and following through with my goal to become a mental health care provider. I chose to become what Ian needed before his death and what I so desperately needed after his death. Years later, along this path, I met Brennan, an Army veteran himself. We shared a passion for supporting the military and veteran community. Being with Brennan brought light back into my life. Through my stories, he got to know Ian, and for the first time since my loss, I let myself feel vulnerable and find love again. After experiencing the sanctity and joy of marriage with Ian, I knew that this was something I didn't want to live the rest of my life without, which is why Brennan and I chose to legally marry. In choosing to remarry, I surrendered all that I had left of Ian on paper and the benefits he had earned. $1,600 per month in dependency and indemnity compensation, a portion of his retirement, health insurance, education benefits, military spouse hiring preference, the ability to use the VA home loan, and base access. I am grateful that base access and commissary and exchange privileges have since been restored. The irony is that the only thing that I didn't lose is that I am and will forever be Ian's widow. Remarrying did not change that. If Brennan and I had waited until I was 55 to marry, as the law currently states to retain benefits, I would still be Ian's widow. But I would have delayed the life I have now, a beautiful second chance at happiness with a man who respected Ian and my loss so much that he sat at Ian's grave and asked his permission to marry me before proposing. Brennan and I have a young son, Harrison Samuel, named in honor of our hero, Ian Samuel. He will always be a part of our lives. No passage of time and no magical age of 55 could change that. People are not replaceable. I personally want to thank Ranking Member Moran for introducing the Love Lives On Act, and I ask that Congress pass this critical legislation to keep our nation's solemn promise to care for our Gold Star spouses. Taking away a surviving spouse's benefits upon remarriage will never change the fact that they will always be the widow or widower of someone who honorably served our country and died due to that service. In closing, we ask for your support strengthening DIC by passing the Caring for Survivors Act and ensuring CHAMP VA healthcare for young adult survivors until age 26. The moral of my story is that the heart has many chambers. In one of mine, I hold my love for Ian, and another, my love for Brennan. I believe you will find this to be true for every survivor. Thank you for letting me share my boys with you today. I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Now we'd now like to recognize Ms. Catherine Monette for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Chairman Tester and Bost, Ranking Members Moran and Takano, and the Committees on Veterans Affairs, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. NCHV appreciates your bipartisan leadership and continuing efforts to focus on the needs of veterans experiencing or at risk of homelessness. There are many proposals that we support to enhance our ability to address veteran homelessness, but I will focus on NCHV's top priorities today. Priority number 1 is restoration of the pandemic-era safety net. HUD recently released point-in-time count data from January 2023, finding an increase of 7.4% in homeless veterans on any night. We all knew VA's emergency programs, nationwide emergency rent assistance programs, and eviction and foreclosure moratoria would sunset. We learned these resources were critical to homelessness prevention and housing more veterans than in previous years, yet a continually worsening housing affordability crisis offset recent accelerations in housing placements as and after these programs sunset. For several years, legislation that could have addressed the statutes limiting these VA authorities and offered additional resources to veterans facing housing instability has stalled unnecessarily before Congress. The best time to act upon legislation would have been before the public health emergency expired on May 11, 2023, but we're here today. So the second best time to act upon this legislation is now. Delayed action here has resulted in veterans losing access to communication, transportation, safety, and survival necessities, the loss of hotel and motel rapid rehousing capacity that gave providers time to place a veteran in more permanent housing without delays associated with locating them, and a 60% reduction in the per diem rate that providers can request from VA, leading some providers to cease serving veterans and other challenges. A handful of bills, including the Senator Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Health Care and Benefits Improvement Act, would all provide VA and organizations nationwide with the funding and flexibility to provide adequate services to unhoused veterans. We urge you to enact this bill with the level of urgency that you would expect if you were unsheltered tonight looking for assistance. Priority 2 is VA Medical Center staffing. NCHV is concerned about reports of unfilled positions related to homelessness at VA medical centers at a time when veteran homelessness is on the rise and communities are increasing efforts to criminalize homelessness. While Secretary McDonough has stated that recent hiring prioritization efforts should not be cause for concern, we have heard for over a month now that VACO's prioritization initiatives continue to result in VAMC directors choosing to leave critical vacancies related to homeless operations unfilled, even those funded via special purpose dollars. We've heard from providers across the country that veterans are unable to access HUD-VASH in a timely way, if at all, from multi-month-long waits for intakes, to hiring pauses that delay program enrollment, to the need for other community providers to support veterans in HUD-VASH when their local VA medical center is unstaffed. And that's not acceptable. We urge Congress to continue its oversight of these programs and VA staffing initiatives to ensure that specific guidance exempting special purpose staffing from hiring pauses can be issued expeditiously to VA medical centers. Priority 3 is to increase HUD-VASH utilization. NCHV continues to support efforts to maximize the use of HUD-VASH vouchers, including by project basing, issuing grants and/or contracts for case management, and appropriating sufficient funding for navigation services and incentives for landlords and PHAs. We support legislation that would address eligibility discrepancies, including the regulatory definition of income used by HUD and Treasury. This definition includes disability compensation, meaning that some homeless veterans with the most acute service-connected disability ratings are ineligible for HUD-VASH and/or to reside in affordable housing developed with LIHTC funds. We urge you to make mandatory tribal HUD-VASH appropriations on behalf of our collective commitment to targeted universalism across our system, and we also support efforts to provide much-needed upstream homelessness prevention tools as requested in the most recent presidential budget request. Our fourth priority is aging veterans. A growing population of aging veterans experiencing homelessness has challenged us to improve services and access. We recommend authorizing HUD-VASH with grant-making capacity to simplify our ability to offer enhanced and coordinated services and supports to elderly veterans utilizing vouchers. Their needs are much more complex than the average veteran, and allowing grant-making capacity would enhance communities' ability to provide those services. We also urge congressional support for an enactment of legislation promoting the development of new subsidized housing, specifically for low and no-income aging and disabled veterans, as well as prioritizing the adaptation of existing spaces across the housing continuum. Lastly, we recommend that Congress allocate funding for staff liaison positions to coordinate efforts to serve aging veterans across all HPO programs. Our written testimony has a full list of authorizing and appropriations priorities that I'm happy to discuss further with you and/or your staff. Thank you for the opportunity to partner with you on our shared priority of ending veteran homelessness.
Thank you. I would now like to recognize Commander Campos for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Chairman Boss and Ranking Member Takano, allow me to start by asking our MOAA representatives in the audience to rise so we can thank you for this opportunity to share our legislative priorities for veterans. So what's the one common theme that brings us together? We're all committed to preserving and protecting service-earned healthcare and benefits for those that we serve. MOAA appreciates the committees working collectively with VSOs and MSOs to improve the lives of our veterans. Our top priority is getting the Senator Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act package signed into law, which has many of our priorities, like caregiving. VA has made progress in advancing caregiving services, but today's demand outpaces availability, and it's still difficult for veterans and caregivers to access these services, including respite care.
For example, a Vietnam veteran caregiver in VA's Caregiver Support Program told us, "I was contacted by VA for an initial phone consult for respite care. I gave some dates for scheduling, but I received no further communication from VA. As a former medical administrator, this is frustrating and deflating personally and to caregivers generally." MOAA and the Quality of Life Foundation have hosted roundtables to help Congress, VA, and decision makers improve caregiving programs. Last fall, we held a roundtable on federal and community respite care options and published a list of recommendations. We urge Congress to pass the home and community-based services, long-term care, caregiver support program bills in our written statement, including the Elizabeth Dole Home Care Act and the Veteran Caregiver Re-Education, Reemployment, and Retirement Act, and to hold hearings to consider our respite care roundtable recommendations. As a 30-year Navy veteran, I want to personally thank VA for my health care. My initial experiences with the VA in and out of service is not always great, but I gave VA another chance, and I hope other women do the same. VA is not perfect, but I see progress, and I know the staff supports me, and they love their job. As such, MOAA continues to advocate to eliminate healthcare disparities and advance research programs for women, minority, and underserved veterans. We urge Congress to establish a joint HVAC and SVAC task force to represent the interests of women, minority, underserved, and vulnerable veteran populations, and pass the Service Member and Veterans Empowerment and Support Act to help MST survivors. Today, VHA is a health system in transition, undergoing more than 2 decades of persistent change and mission expansion. Health systems like VHA were vital during the pandemic, and they continue to evolve since the crisis. But VA needs predictable funding to preserve its foundational mission. So we urge Congress to appropriate funding to stabilize and modernize VHA's workforce and human and physical infrastructure. We know the PAC Act has made monumental strides for ill veterans, so implementation is imperative if we're going to see radical change. MOAA and DAV collaborated on a report called Ending the Wait for Toxic Exposed Veterans, which provides an overview of the challenges in the presumptive process and presents recommendations for improvement. We found on average toxic exposures do not receive presumptive condition status for over 30 years. That's because they were not conceded while in service. MOAA and DAV urge congressional members and staff to attend our report briefing in May. Invitation is forthcoming, and implement our report recommendations. Finally, MOAA recommends Congress establish GI Bill parity for reserve members to ensure every day in uniform counts for service. We also support the House and the Senate compromise version. The bill will incentivize active duty members to continue their service in the reserves. Thank you for considering our priorities. Let's work together to get the Veterans Package and, on the DoD side, the STAR Act signed into law. Together, let's send a strong message. Our country cares and supports our all-volunteer force in and out of uniform, which is one of the most important ways we can sustain a strong national defense. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. McLaughlin, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Bost, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Takano, and Ranking Member Moran, and distinguished members of the committee, on behalf of the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, commonly referred to as NACVSO, I extend our gratitude for the opportunity to address this joint session. My name is Michael McLaughlin, and I serve as a legislative director for NACVSO. Our organization is a unique one in that all of our appointed leaders or elected leaders, as well as the majority of our membership, currently serve as VA-accredited representatives, working in the field, assisting veterans and their dependents daily. It is my honor to share with you the issues that are important to our organization, issues such as federal support for coordination with local government VSOs, Last year, I testified before this joint session on this critical issue of federal support and coordination with Governmental Veteran Service Officers, or GVSOs. Since that testimony, little action has changed or been put into play supporting frontline GVSOs working at the state, county, tribal, and municipal levels. Unfortunately, there has been just about as much discussion on expanding paid services for veterans as there has been as neglecting the essential partnerships between GVSOs, traditional veteran service organizations, and the federal government. Just as we would never expect our active duty military members to have to purchase their own ammunition to wage their fight, veterans should never be expected to purchase their own access to their own earned VA benefits. GVSOs serve as frontline advocates in their communities, offering support that extends beyond disability claims. While we handle a significant workload of disability claims, our duties encompass a wide range of services. Despite the invaluable role that GVSOs play supporting veterans and their families, there appears to remain misunderstandings regarding the scope of our responsibilities. Disability claims are just one aspect of the work we do. We also provide essential services to veterans that veterans need to thrive beyond their military service. We help coordinate their VA healthcare, whether that's at the VA or in the community. When they get a billing issue that arises from that care, we help them resolve it. When a veteran needs to access emergency care services in their community, they call their GVSO to ensure that VA is notified in a timely manner. When a veteran is placed in hospice in a local healthcare facility, the social workers call their local GVSO to help with enrollment at their bedside. When a veteran needs a 2-hour ride to a medical appointment, they call our offices. When a homeless veteran is identified after hours by local law enforcement or sheriff deputies, it is our offices they call to help secure a hotel when no shelters exist in rural United States. We are the ones whom the veterans attend school, church, and see at the grocery store. It is the GVSOs that get the call on their personal cell to be notified of yet another veteran in their community who lost their struggle with PTSD. Disability claims are what we do, and we are good at them, but it doesn't stop there. GVSOs are not incentivized by profiting from a veteran's disability claim or their injury in military service. Instead, we are incentivized by improving the lives of those we live with and those that we serve in our local communities. In recent years, historic legislation has expanded benefits and care for veterans with little consideration being given to the resources needed to provide access to those benefits. Initiatives such as the Veterans Appeals Modernization Act, the Mission Act, the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act, and the PACT Act have placed additional demands on GVSOs and VSOs without adequate local support. The COVID-19 pandemic also further highlighted the need for robust local assistance. We encourage and we commend the efforts by this Congress to support and collaborate with GVSOs, efforts like Representative Levin's Commitment to Veteran Support and Outreach Act, which aims to make federal grants available to GVSOs for the first time ever and would funnel resources to areas of the country with critical shortages of GVSOs, high rates of veteran suicide, and high rates of veterans crisis line referrals. We further applaud efforts like Representative Luttrell's Veteran Benefits Improvement Act, which aims to strengthen upstream communication and review support between VA and GVSOs. Similarly, Representative Van Orden's TAP Promotion Act represents positive steps towards enhancing upstream cooperation between the federal government and GVSOs and VSOs during military transitions. Governmental veteran service officers are a force multiplier. We should be creating a system where we empower them to generate efficiency within that system. To use a metaphor, a forward operating base or FOB in a combat theater should seek to strengthen and support the fighting positions of the troops holding the line. This requires communication, sharing of intelligence, and resources to the local front. If the FOB fails to support the fighting positions, then the mission fails. Then we fail. Chairman, ranking members, members of this committee, on behalf of NACVSO, thank you for your attention to these important issues, and I urge this committee to consider the critical role GVSOs play in supporting veterans and their families by investing in local assistance and fostering collaboration between the federal government and our local agencies. We can ensure that no veteran is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Sheldon, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Bost, and to Ranking Member Takano, thank you for the opportunity to share with you today, and to the members of the House and Senate Veterans Committee, thank you, thank you. My name's Mel Sheldon. I am a Vietnam veteran. Also, I am an Agent Orange prostate cancer survivor. So far, so good. Thank you for the VA for helping me. Also, I've served on tribal council at Tulalip Tribes, a small little reservation north of Seattle, about 35 minutes. Just in case you're in the area, we have a small bed and breakfast there if you want to stay with us. Also, regionally, I serve as AT&I First Vice President. We represent 57 tribes in the Northwest, and currently also I am the alternate delegate Vice President for National Congress of American Indians. So I'm serving at 3 different levels and very honored to serve as Veterans Committee Chairman for our regional committee there. National Congress of American Indians, as many of you know who it is, but we were, 80 years ago we were founded. We just celebrated that birthday. Oldest and largest representing American Indians and Alaska Natives, and we're so proud of all of those that we represent, men and women. Native people have served at a higher rate in the armed forces than any other group of Americans, and they have served in all the nation's wars since the Revolutionary War. Despite this impressive record of service, oftentimes the lack of programs, services, and assistance that Native veterans receive upon returning home from serving is underwhelming, and we are asking you all for your help that we can change that, getting the information out there, helping them step up to the plate to take advantage of what the VA offers. Today, while my written testimony touches on a number of subjects, I want to concentrate today on the quality of life for Native Americans in housing and suicide prevention. While housing is often thought of as an infrastructure problem challenge, the reality is it is being underhoused or homeless. It really is a health disparity. Despite the service they provide to our country, homelessness and housing insecurity remains a major concern for our Native veterans. At least one study found that Native veterans made up 19% of all the homeless veterans in that study sample, making Native veterans' homeless rate almost 10 times their representation in the general public. Another study indicated that Native American veterans living in poverty were twice as likely to be homeless more than any other non-veteran Native American. In the area of housing, the most important action that can be taken for Native American veterans is to reauthorize and make permanent the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act. Many of us know that by NACVSO. NACVSO has done a great job for us and has been successfully used by the tribes across the country, which then helps us focus on housing needs in our own communities. At Tulalip, we're almost 300 houses behind, so the need is there, not only for our members, but our veterans as well. But however, NACVSO expired 10 years ago. Reauthorizing NACVSO will help Native American veterans struggling with homelessness by improving the HUD Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, HUD, that's VASH program. Recognizing this critical need, earlier this year, the Senate, with strong bipartisan support, voted in favor of reauthorizing NACVSO. That vote in favor of reauthorization included support for support for 17 of the 19 members from the Senate Committee on Veteran Affairs. So stepping up to the plate, and the House, I'm sure, is stepping up to the plate as well. Before I close, I do want to turn also to the issue of suicide among Native veterans. I myself, through the years, have experienced 2 of my close friends that decided to leave early, and it hurt. It was devastating. The reality is American veterans and Alaska Natives experience high rates of depression and psychological distress, which contributes to Native Americans having the highest suicide rate. While the Department of Veteran Affairs, VA, acknowledges this as a national crisis that affects all Americans and publishes reports, it continues to offer limited data. And that may be the key. If we can size up how big of a challenge it is, we can apply the appropriate measures to help our veterans that are considering that alternative. So sitting before you and sharing, I am very grateful. There are more issues that we can always talk about, but anytime when National Congress of American Indians has our conference, please come and see us and share. We'll share what we can to help all of Indian country. OCM Haishka Tigwitsi for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Mr. McManus, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. I want to thank you.
Mr. McManus, I think your microphone needs to be put on.
Oh, good. We'll start over again.
That's so much better. There we go.
So well, good morning, and thank you all for the good work you do for the American people, and particularly for our veterans and their families. This is not VBA nor my first time presenting to the Joint Congressional Committee on Veterans Affairs. We have been the senior vets on the Hill for a long time. More importantly, you all know what we represent, and you know what we stand for. We stand for American citizens first, and for all generations of American veterans, not just our era of veterans. Our mission is to ensure the experiences of Vietnam veteran generation is never again repeated by our nation. Just as you know about VBA, let it be said that we know all about you. We know that your hard work on this committee is motivated by your love of this country, your real and honest concern for those who have chosen to wear the uniform in defense of this country. You are the congressional leaders who will ensure that the spirit learned from our experiences will forever guide the conscience, respect, and the way current and future veterans are valued and treated by our country. We respectfully ask that you hear and pledge support for our current priorities in caring for our nation's returned heroes. Since our formation, VA's top and most solemn priority has always been the accounting and recovery of the POW service members. And while I know this is outside the committee, this has always been a driving force behind VBA. Today, the families of 1,577 Americans still listed as MIA from Southeast Asia wait patiently for answers regarding their unaccounted for loved ones. Timely and consistent funding of DPAA is an effective way for Congress to ensure that those families receive the fate-clarifying information and closure that they deserve. We urge you to honor the following returned heroes from Vietnam by passing 2 pieces of legislation now on the floor. The first one is the naming of the VA Medical Center in West Palm Beach, Florida, in honor of Thomas H. Corey Act. That's Bill H.R. 7333. Maybe there's too many threes, there's 3 trees. And the Donut Dolly's Congressional Gold Medal Act, which is H.R. 3592. Some of you know that Tom Corey, for many years on the Hill, as he was our VBA national president, during the Tet Offensive, an enemy round in the neck left him paralyzed and a paraplegic. He was 100% disabled veteran and a Bronze Star recipient, and dedicated his entire life to his country and other veterans. He was not only one who went above and beyond, there were others. There are 627 Donut Dollies that volunteered for the Red Cross during the Vietnam War to serve in the perilous frontline positions. Their service has long been ignored or belittled because they are women. They deserve the recognition of the Congressional Gold Medal. I can personally say that I experienced exposure to Donut Dollies in Vietnam, and I can tell you that it was motivating and moving to me that these civilian women would come over there and risk everything just to bring us a little bit of morale-boosting donuts and cookies and warm lemonade. It was great. Several of our priorities this year are going to focus on the toxic wounds. High on that will be to compel the VA to execute the Fort McClellan epidemiology study required by the PACT Act to allow people in that area and around the country. There were 650,000 women veterans that served at Fort McClellan the right to participate and receive health care. We want to call for a pre-Gulf War burn pit use study and make sure that the generations that were affected by burn pits prior to the Gulf War are also recognized and eligible for veteran benefits. We also come back for the second year asking to amend the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act of 2019 to extend that 12 nautical mile limitation. The intent of Congress in that act was to open the availability of care and benefits to the Navy veterans that served offshore. I think the intent of Congress was noble, and I think it was right on target. From our perspective, what happened was when it got into the regulatory process, and it conflicted with some previous public laws or federal laws or statutes or whatever you want to call them, and that, in fact, muddied the water, and when it came out, it was actually worse than when we went in with it. Okay, so there was an arbitrary 12-mile nautical mile limitation, and if you look at the map, it's all over the place. And the intent was, let's cover that 330,000 Navy veterans that served in Tonkin Gulf and the South China Sea. We want to maintain close congressional oversight on the implementation of the PACT Act, including a transparent review of the TEF dollars and how are they being and will be spent in the future. All right? So we're not holding a position on that until we hear what you come up with and your recommendations are. We want to hold and still want to hold a hearing on the oversight hearing on the Toxic Exposure Research Act, which called for an intergenerational research to investigate birth defects in descendants of veterans and to investigate that, why that law has not been followed. All right? And so we're still on that. I'm going to be running out of time here quickly. We also want to address the persistent challenge to access providers of health care in Puerto Rico by amending the Puerto Rican tax code to draw more health care workers into Puerto Rico to join in the VA healthcare system. As you know, if I were to go to work in a private hospital in San Juan and earning the same money as somebody in the VA system, my take-home pay could be as much as 30% different because of the requirements of on the civil service employees versus the requirements that are on the territorial employees. So we need to get that addressed to up that as a priority. We also would like the VA to reinstate the use of physician assistants and mental health providers at the VA hospitals and clinics to address the historic difficulties with access to mental health care for veterans. Permitting PAs to practice in this space will allow for the dramatic expansion of access to mental health services for our nation's veterans and begin to address the suicide crisis we are now facing. The enactment of the 48-hour VSO review period for disability claims, which is a regulatory process, but we might need help from Congress to get that reinstated.
Mr. McManus, we need to we're about 6 minutes over on time.
Okay, all right. The rest of our, we provided written testimony that covers the rest of our priorities, and with that, I'll end up and just thank you for your time and your attention and your continued support.
Thank you for yours. Thank you for your testimony. General McGinn, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, Chairman Bost, Ranking Member Takano, and other distinguished members of the Senate and House committees. On behalf of the National Guard Association of the United States, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you. Your committees have dedicated significant time and effort towards policies which protect and defend those who protect and defend our nation. Serving in the military naturally comes with a level of hardship, but the system itself should never add to that challenge. We look forward to continuing our work with each of you to improve the quality of life for both those currently serving and retired. Our main goal at NACVSO is parity. Parity in the structure of our force, parity in the acquisition and modernization of our equipment, and parity in the benefits our members receive. The operational use of the National Guard has grown exponentially since 9/11. We now make up 39% of the total Army and 30% of the total Air Force. The weight of the National Guard pulls in our national security plan is extraordinary. Yet many Americans fail to understand the depth of our role as the primary combat reserve of our defense of the nation. It is imperative that we change that narrative. In my testimony, I'll focus on 3 specific areas key to recruiting and retaining a National Guard force that remains prepared to protect our nation. Increased parity for education benefits, improved transition assistance, and consistent access to medical coverage. Regarding education benefit parity, when an individual joins the military, they invest in our national security. In return, as a token of our gratitude, we invest in their future through educational benefits. We are incredibly grateful for the work done by your committees and staff to help elevate the need for parity in how a reserve component accrues GI Bill benefits. While the Forever GI Bill and the FY18 NGAA made positive advancements to close that gap, there's still work to be done. Unlike the active component, Guardsmen serve in a variety of statuses that do not accrue GI Bill benefits. A day in uniform is a day in service to this country, and it's past time this disparity is corrected. We are very pleased to see your 2 committees introduce the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act of 2024. This would count all statuses, including weekend drills, annual training, and specific state active duty missions. This is an incredible step forward, and I know much work has been done and has gone into the committee staff level, and NACVSO is extremely grateful and appreciative. Our second area concerns the reserve component track for transition assistance. Retiring from the military is a significant life event. The Transition Assistance Program was established to help prepare service members for the next chapter of life once they come off orders. However, Guardsmen come on and off active duty orders multiple times, and each time we are required to complete TAP as if we are ending our military career, rather than returning to our regularly scheduled lives. Not only is this a waste of resources and time, but it creates a level of fatigue. By the time a Guardsman actually needs TAP, many individuals have gone through the program 4 times or more. TAP is mandated to have 3 tracks. NACVSO asked that one of those tracks be rededicated and tailored to the reserve component. The National Guard and Reserve has unique needs when coming off active duty orders, and specific attention should be paid to the accrual and transition of benefits. It is my understanding these committees are considering language to address this issue, and we ask for your full support. Our third area of focus is zero-cost TRICARE and dental. Readiness is our top priority. We must be always ready to protect, defend, and respond at a moment's notice. Guardsmen must maintain a constant level of readiness and proficiency. For the most part, the Department of Defense provides the tools to promote preparedness. Although we do not ask a soldier to purchase a Humvee or for an airman to purchase an F-16, yet for health care, the service member is required to purchase their own out of pocket. As a result, there are currently 130,000 reserve component members without health care. We have units far below the 75% medical deployability goal set by DoD. In these current times, we cannot afford any percentage of our team to sit on the bench when it comes to a potential fight with China, Russia, or Iran. We will absolutely need every player out in the field. We respectfully ask you to fully support the Health Care for Our Troops Act and the Dental for Our Troops Act, providing zero-cost TRICARE and dental coverage. This will dramatically increase readiness, recruiting, and retention. However, the benefits extend far beyond the current force. A healthy guardsman is a healthy veteran. Preventative care through the service member's career reduces medical expenditures after retirement. Consistent coverage would allow those within our ranks to establish healthy habits for routine upkeep, develop care plans for long-term health issues, and address mental health concerns as they arise. There is no better way to truly put our service members first. Again, I ask each of you for your support on Healthcare and Dental for Our Troops Acts. In conclusion, thank you for inviting August to testify. Your efforts are critical to the well-being of the National Guard. I look forward to continuing our work together and appreciate the leadership from the members and the staff of this committee, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Mr. Hansa, you were recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Tester and Boost, ranking members,
Microphone. Thank you.
Sorry. Chairman Tester and Boost, ranking members Moran and Takano, and other members of the committee. Good morning. I'm John Hanzik, a retired Navy Command Master Chief, and I currently am the National President of the Fleet Reserve Association. I'm here today to express the concerns of our members of the oldest Sea Service Association that has been around for nearly 100 years, and proud to tell you that on Veterans Day, November 11th of this year, we celebrate our centennial. As one of the leading supporters of the PACT Act that was enacted in the last session of Congress, FRA is grateful for its passage. It was a top priority of the association and that it be implemented effectively. Military service for our nation requires service members to go places that may expose them to toxins and cause illness and diseases that may not be diagnosed for years or even decades after their service. The act was signed into law in August of 22, and we recognize the fact. Recently, VA proposed a rule to expand the locations and timeframes for which VA presumes exposure to Agent Orange and other herbicides. The FRA members welcome the recent VA proposed regulation that will implement a new presumption of exposure to locations where herbicides were tested, used, or stored outside of Vietnam. My membership is shocked to hear that nearly 250,000 veterans may be at risk of being prescribed medicine they are allergic to or would interact poorly with their existing medications because of issues with the new VA electronic health record system. We're thankful to the VA Inspector General's efforts with the House Veterans Affairs Committee Technology Modernization Subcommittee oversight to ID this problem, and we hope that it will be corrected soon. The FRA supports legislation authorizing immediate payment of concurrent receipt of full military retired pay and veterans disability compensation for all those eligible. I heard earlier this morning the Legion commander state that it was like a tax. If I'm questioned, I'll get into that further. The membership of the association strongly believes that reducing a retiree's retired pay because they're disabled is in fact an injustice. Therefore, we strongly support the Major Richard Starr Act, sponsored by Chairman Tester and Representative Bilirakis, that expands concurrent receipt to include combat-related special compensation veterans who are medically retired with less than 20 years of service. And you may be aware, over 2/3 of Congress co-sponsor this concurrent receipt legislation. We need to pass this bill. Speaking of which, I've been in the FRA 41 years. It's been one of our priorities for as long as I have been a member of the FRA. And we still wait. Aging veterans represent a segment of vulnerable individuals increasingly being targeted by bad actors preying upon their benefits that they've earned. This is why the FRA supports the Guard VA Benefits Act. That would reinstate penalties for charging veterans and survivors unauthorized fees related to claims for VA benefits. The National Association of Attorneys General dispatched a letter to congressional leaders last year on behalf of a bipartisan group of 44 state attorneys general urging passing of the Guard Act. Speaking about veteran suicide, and I get uncomfortable with this, but one suicide is one too many. The FRA is grateful to the VA for allowing any veteran experiencing a suicidal crisis to get emergency care at no cost from either a VA or non-VA healthcare facility. And we're also appreciative that enrollment in the VA system is not required. Specifically, more than 32,000 veterans in acute suicidal crisis have received free emergency health care under the new life-saving policy. But unfortunately, veterans still remain at an elevated risk. We're pleased to know that veterans experiencing homelessness have declined by 11% since January of 2020. In total, the estimated number of veterans experiencing homelessness in America has declined by 55% since 2010. The majority of FRA members were opposed to burial restrictions. I'm sorry, I didn't pause enough there, for the in-ground burials at Arlington National Cemetery. More than 73% of FRA members surveyed last January support creating a second national cemetery, perhaps on the West Coast, in lieu of additional restrictions on burials at Arlington National, and still be able to obtain the full military honors they rightfully earned. We support expanding America's National Cemetery Act. It would authorize the DoD and the VA to transform an existing VA cemetery to maintain interment with full honors as Arlington National reaches capacity. We should not be forced to change their well-earned plans because of unnecessary administrative rules. I appreciate this opportunity to testify on behalf of the Fleet Reserve Association, and I stand ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to questions. I'm going to recognize myself for 3 minutes. Mr. Lisinski, the JWV wrote a letter to the Secretary condemning a VA attorney's appalling and public anti-Semitism remarks about Israel hostages in November. Are you satisfied with the VA's response and how this incident had been handled?
Thank you, Chairman Bost. In response to that, on the 29th of January, we had a meeting with Secretary McDonough, and it was based on questions that was coming to the JWV membership. Some of our members were concerned, and they asked the question that, how do I know that that employee did not handle my case, did not evaluate my case, did touch my case. And we brought that to the attention of Secretary McDonough, and he's assured us that there was no bias and no prejudice in her work. I go back to what I said earlier, that education is the important factor, and I hear this throughout this panel, that education, no matter what the topic is very important. So JWV stands behind that we would be glad to work with anybody that wants to deal with anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate. And although I said earlier that we fought for freedom of speech, and we understand freedom of speech, and we value freedom of speech, but when freedom of speech is brought into the workforce, and it has a connotation of anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate, and your employees are affected by it, and our customers are affected by it, and our stakeholders are affected by it, it's no longer freedom of speech. Thank you, sir, for asking that.
Commander Campos, I appreciate your support and helping us get the Senator Elizabeth Dole Veterans Package over the line. What would the consequences of not passing this important legislation be?
The consequences are of not providing resources to those that are actually taking care of veterans. This is a bipartisan package. There's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't move forward. Understand that there's, issues with funding and so on, but a lot of caregivers and veterans are counting on it. And each day, and the services that these caregivers provide, there's no amount of money this country could pay for the services that they provide in the way that they provide it. So a lot of veterans, a lot of our members, a lot of the Military Coalition members, a lot of our colleagues here are waiting for this package to get across the line.
Thank you. Ranking Member Takano, you are recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I may go over slightly. Is that okay with you? Right. Ms. Monet, it's great to see you again. HUD-VASH voucher utilization has long been an issue. We, VA and HUD, have tried to address. What are some actions Congress can take to increase voucher utilization and get veterans in need into housing?
So I think the most immediate action you can take is to really push VA to address this issue that they're having with their hiring caps and, setting aside special purpose funding, but not actually filling those positions. I think that is very much low-hanging fruit. The funding is there. They gain nothing by leaving special purpose funding on the table, and veterans are harmed. I think there are other things that you can do to increase housing stock, to incentivize PHAs and landlords to take these vouchers, but I think the easiest thing to start with is to really work with your friends at 810 Vermont.
What about, are there other eligibility issues Congress needs to address to ensure that all veterans who need homeless services can access them?
Absolutely. I think that there are many restrictions based on discharge statuses that need to be addressed across all programs, particularly for HUD-VASH and the HPAC program. But with regard specifically to HUD-VASH, there are these issues around the counting of disability compensation as income that do actually leave the most vulnerable veterans out from accessing vouchers and project-based vouchers in particular. And that's a really hard pill to swallow because project-based settings are generally most optimized for the most vulnerable and most disabled veterans. And so it's just really hard to see them left out.
What about the issue about the benefits making some veterans ineligible for housing? Is that also an issue we need to fix as well?
Absolutely.
That is a serious issue that the mayor of Los Angeles is trying to deal with in terms of the eligibility cliff. Ironically, the housing we build for veterans, we can't put veterans in there because their disability benefits make them ineligible. So that seems to be contradictory. We're quickly approaching a year since the flexible authorities the VA utilized during the pandemic to address homelessness expired. How is the failure to get the HOME Act signed into law affecting VA and community providers' ability to get veterans housed?
Well, there are some instances where the damage just has been done, right? Where grantees have left programs and just are no longer operating services in their community. But there are other areas that could really make a difference, right? When you think about extending the Section 4201 assistance, I think back to the end of the public health emergency, and I think within the first 6 weeks of the end of the emergency, we were hearing that VA canceled something like 38,000 pre-scheduled transportation rides for veterans, and like there were 10,000, I think over 10,000, they said, missed medical and mental health appointments across the country just because veterans couldn't access what they needed to. I think there was even one veteran they mentioned that passed away because they couldn't get to dialysis appointments. And I mean, that's very basic and simple, and it sounds counterintuitive, but I mean, resources like that really do make a difference for veterans who are struggling and have next to nothing.
So the expired authorities really have had a tremendous, dramatic impact.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Sheldon, I'm glad to see that the National Congress of American Indians is here this morning and that tribal and native voices are recognized in this hearing before our committee, and welcome. I want to thank you for your detailed testimony regarding the barriers Native veterans faced when accessing VA services. A piece of your testimony that really struck me were the issues related to housing on Native lands. And I agree with you that being underhoused or homeless is a health disparity, and this is an issue we should address with urgency. So underutilization of the VA Native American Direct Loan Program seems to be a direct cause of housing insecurity that some Native Americans face, Native veterans face. How can VA improve this program to better reach and serve Native veterans in obtaining stable housing?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that question. As I was prepping for this testimony, I came upon the natal program and what it does in housing and such. And so what it was is a new program. So how can we educate Indian country on the programs that are being offered? And to me, that's the cusp of the question. Working with NCAI, we can use that arm to let all of our tribes across the nation know programs, working better with our veterans.
So you're saying better outreach, but have you seen any improvements to VA's outreach on tribal lands regarding the NADL program, or could they do better?
Yes, absolutely. I think we had Veterans Secretary out at New Orleans, Louisiana. And that type of outreach in person means a lot to us in the country, and we're able to better get the data and share it with other tribes and veterans in Indian country.
Great. Well, thank you. My last line of questioning is to Mr. McManus. You spoke, Mr. McManus, about the importance of the PACT Act for veterans that you represent. But in your testimony, you also presented to us some cohorts that were left out of the PACT Act. In light of that, can you tell us, the importance, can you tell us what concerns you have about capping or sunsetting the spending that we do on toxic exposure, on care and benefits for the toxic exposed veterans, given that we have maybe more cohorts to consider including into the PACT Act?
Let me start by saying that we believe that the PACT Act overall has been a tremendous success and one of the greatest pieces of veterans legislation that come out in the last half a century. So, like any piece of legislation, it's subject to debate even after it's enacted and signed into law, but it's also subject to regulatory interpretation. And frequently, intent of legislation, when it gets to regulatory interpretation, becomes different. We think that one of the great things, the basis of the foundations of the PACT Act, was the fact that we weren't going to have to go through a political quagmire every time we wanted to get into a new toxin or a new location where toxins were or whatever, and that the funding was there for the benefit of the veterans and whatever. We understand that that's up for discussion and that hadn't been universal, and we'll wait until we hear what your recommendations are before we weigh in on that. But we think that really the strength of that toxic exposure fund foundation is the foundation of that law, because it makes it carry on from one generation to another generation to another generation.
Well, specifically, the burden of proof has been moved away from the veteran, and the benefit of the doubt has been expanded to the veteran. But we also, in order to do that, we had to have a funding mechanism, and some are suggesting we should cap or diminish that funding, and that I just want to make sure that you all had a chance to talk about the importance of the funding part of this.
We hear pro and con on that, and we haven't heard anybody come up with any rational program that will continue to address the legislation of changing it. So we're not in favor of changing it unless it's something that's reasonable.
I hear you. Well, thank you, Mr. McManus. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Levin, you are recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Monet, great to see you again. You mentioned that you've been working for 3 years to extend the flexibilities and GPD increases provided in Isaacson Row. Homeless veterans have now been without needed resources for 10 months since the expiration of these authorities. And unfortunately, they're being held hostage in exchange for other policy concessions. My question is there any reason we shouldn't pass the provisions we agree on now rather than waiting until we have agreement on everything?
From my perspective, no. There are over 35,000 veterans homeless on any night, all waiting for you to act. And there are countless other provisions in the bill that a lot of the folks on this panel have discussed, and I do think that urgency is of the utmost priority from my perspective.
Well, not surprisingly, I agree with you. I think we should pass what we agree on, and we're not, around here we're not going to agree on everything, but we need to pass what we agree on right away. Ms. Mullaney, thank you for your support of the Garden Reserve GI Bill Parity Act, which I reintroduced last week. Obviously, there will be a cost associated with it, and it will be competing for limited offsets with other proposals. But as our committees work through the legislative process, can you tell us TAP's view on what Congress should address first when it comes to things like GI Bill parity, Chapter 35 sunset, and full MHA for online classes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Garden Reserve parity and Chapter 35 sunset is TAP's top educational priority. We really believe that we should focus on getting everyone benefits before we start whittling through who should get increased. Those that currently have nothing have no opportunity to go to school. We encourage Congress to prioritize those before moving forward with the online MHA.
Thank you. Commander Campos and Major General McGinn, I appreciate your organization's support for parity as well. Commander Campos, perhaps we'll start with you. Can you speak about the importance of the legislation to your members and the urgency with which you think Congress should act on the proposal?
Thank you for that question and for the support on this important bill. The GI, as I mentioned in my remarks, the Garden Reserve parity is an opportunity to encourage those that are leaving active duty to join the reserves. The GI Bill is a recruiting and retention tool. And so we can't afford as a country, when we have recruiting challenges in the active duty component, as well as the reserve component, to have that talent lost. And so we see that this is a national defense issue, and we recognize and should recognize as a country that these are important contributions that these service members give and this benefit and what we need to modernize the all-volunteer force.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, if I could just have another minute or so. General McGinn, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Yes, thank you, sir, for the question. I would echo my colleagues' comments about recruiting and retention. At a time when our country is really struggling with recruiting and retention, I think the GI Parity Act is one good way to entice and attract talent into our services. specifically our reserve force, and also to retain them, And so, as you know, the cost of growing a soldier or an airman is expensive. The more we can increase our retention rates, then that's going to assist us. So that's a cost savings there just by retaining some of our soldiers and our airmen. And secondly, as far as the parity piece, service in Title 32 status should not be treated any differently than service in Title 10 status. As I mentioned, a day of service is a day of service. So that the status of which you're in, I think, is certainly something that needs to be corrected. But to back up onto my recruiting and retention, I think that's the key issue to our members, and I think that's something that we all see as a struggle these days.
Mr. Chairman, I'm okay for one more minute. Colonel Lashinsky, in your testimony, you called for gender-specific care at all VA facilities and more providers with expertise in women's health. I was proud to support the Deborah Sampson Act, which included several provisions to improve care for women veterans at VA. That bill included a provision that authorized $1 million annually through fiscal year 25 in additional funding for the Women Veterans Health Mini Residency Program. Since its implementation in 2008, around 10,000 VA providers have participated in this program, which trains nurses and physicians working in primary care and emergency medicine on core women's health topics, including trauma-informed care, intimate partner violence, and menopause. I'm currently working with my colleague and friend, Representative Buddy Carter of Georgia, on legislation to reauthorize this crucial funding and ensure the Women Veterans Health Mini Residency Program can continue to train VA providers. Colonel Lashinsky, why is it so important that we train VA providers to provide gender-specific care? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. You know, having served as a combat service support brigade commander, women were a big part of that organization. We've come a long way since the days of before, I don't want to say old, but the days before, that we handed a female pilot a uniform, a male uniform, and we said to them, make it fit, it will work. You know, some of our healthcare systems are a little bit antiquated, and we're expecting that our female soldiers, airmen, Marines, throughout the whole service, to make them fit in the world that I served in. We need to continue to have the mini residency program. We thank you for the funding of that. And we also say that we should be taking best practices that are out in the civilian world for our female service members. We should be adapting them as well so they could have fit. They're entitled to the exact same health care system as a male is. So I do want to say on behalf of the Jewish War Veterans of the United States and for all veteran organizations, thank you for supporting that, and thank you for continuing to support that.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to everybody for your testimony, and I'll yield back.
And I want to say thank you to everyone that was here. And I want to say I apologize for the lack of amount of members being here. It's kind of it was a scheduling issue that occurred both in the Senate and in the House. Know that this committee, both our committee on the House side, and I'm sure the Senate committee, if Tessa was here, he would say that as well. We're here to serve you. We thank you for the partnership that you provide with us to make sure that our veterans are being provided for. We know that there's other areas we have to expand on and work on. We also know that we're required to make sure that whatever we're doing, that the funding is coming from somewhere. It is a very big challenge, but I have told you in my opening, and I do mean that, we're going to work every way possible to make sure that as many needs as we can are being provided for, and just making a promise to you and moving a bill that's not going to move on both sides of the aisle and not going to get signed by the president is just that. It's a nice show, but I'm not here for a show. I'm here to try to help our veterans. I told you off at the beginning that it was personal to me. It is like it is to you. And I thank you all for being here, and I thank everyone for your testimony and everything you do every day. With that, we're going to adjourn this, and this concludes the joint hearing.